Welcome to Enjoy Fort Wayne. This episode is brought to you by the Wailanai Farmers Market and highlights the 350 vendors that make up the #1 market in the state of Indiana.
I'm Darrin Jones with Moonlight Farm.
And Darrin, tell us, how long have you been farming?
Well, I'll turn 59 this year, so I was born into it. And
So 59 years.
yeah, I mean,
Okay.
There's been side hustles working in factories and stuff like that over the years, but this is where my heart's always been.
Okay. So, and I know you're not exactly in Fort Wayne, but just a little bit south, right?
More west.
West, yeah.
Over, most people, when I say Akron, they think I'm saying Ohio, but It's Akron, Indiana, which is the first town west of North Manchester.
Okay, yeah.
So my address says Macy, but I'm actually about 5 miles south of Akron, which is a lot more easier to find that way.
Okay, and you grew up there?
A couple miles from there, yeah.
Okay, so you're from that area. That's what you know.
Yeah.
But now you've been at the Wailanai Farmers Market for a little while. We're going to get into that, but I want to ask you first, at what point did you know for sure? Because I would think if you're born into it, at some point, even maybe as a 10-year-old, a 20-year-old, a 22-year-old, a 17-year-old, there's a time where you're like, well, I don't know if I really want to do this. Did you have a breaking point where you're like, no, this is what I want to do? Can you pinpoint an age or anything like that?
Well, like I said, it's when I was young, I think you always want to aspire to, back when I was younger, it was a big herd of cows, might have been 50, 60 cows, and then it wasn't long till it was 100. Now we're into the thousands, and I just knew I was never quite geared for that. My life took a big detour starting in 2002, where I divorce and other things led me to mainly working in factories and becoming a machinist for several years. But I always had the love for the cows, and I always wanted to get back in some capacity. And just dumb luck talking to a friend of mine down at the Indiana State Fair, and he said he was selling his milk, and I said, who you selling? How you doing it? And that's how what led me to do what I'm doing. And then a strange twist of fate in 2018 says, I'm going to throw everything I got into this, and this is what I do. I don't work in the factory. I just milk my small handful of cows and try to give the people who want the milk, give them their options.
Yeah. So is Moonlight Farms pretty much just milk, and has it always been that way, or?
Yeah, I mean, that's, I one of my favorite words, I think, when it comes to business, I think businesses are better if they're diversified. I'm not very diversified right now, but that's something that maybe in the future I want to, maybe sell some beef and stuff like that. But right now, I've just concentrating on one thing has kept me plenty busy.
Sure. Okay. I feel like a lot of listeners, and myself included, we weren't sure, and so I was just curious, but no, I know enough about milk in general and things that go into it that I'm sure it keeps you plenty busy. Now, what would you say, I'm curious, what is something that you can tell us that the average person would just have no clue about the process of milking a cow that you can speak to? Like, what is something that, if people were to watch me, they'd be surprised that I do this?
I think more than anything that it's the commitment, the milking the cows twice a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, and it gets very monotonous. And I think that's like I think milking cows is something that you can't like it. You've got to love it, and you've got to, today in today's world, I think a lot of the, I'll never diss on the big dairies or anything, but there's the owners don't have as much hands-on as we did 30, 40, 50 years ago, and that's something I still enjoy, having that one-on-one interaction with each one of my cows, because I that's just, and I like I said, you have a commitment, and you get to know each one of those girls' personalities. They're just like us. They're all different.
Yeah. Yeah, that's funny. I know I've had a few conversations with you over the last few weeks, and we've been talking podcasts, and I know that you listen to other podcasts. I bring that up because I was listening to a podcast, and it made me think of you because it was two comedians talking, and they were talking about random stuff, and what came up was the subject of milking a cow. And the guy goes, something that I just realized that I feel really stupid. When you milk a cow, you understand it has to be a female that's pregnant, right? And the guy was like, wait, what? And he's like, well, think about it. Can you, first of all, every women can have milk, a raccoon can think about it. It's when they've had a baby, that's when the milk comes. And the guy was like blown away by that thought. And so I wanted to ask you, do you the breeding process, or what does that look like? Or do you ever I don't have enough cows to milk, or is that a thing?
The perfect scenario is for each cow to have a calf once a year. So if she had her baby today on February 19th, in theory, 60 days from now on April the 19th is when we would look towards breeding her to have her next baby. So that's where you come up with the ideal lactation for a cow is 305 days. So if she would breed back on April 19th, then 2 months before she has her next baby, you would dry her off, give her 2 months vacation, so everything she eats grows that baby to its best possible maturity and everything, and then she comes in rested, ready to go again.
Okay. See, I feel like this is not normal information that people just know. This is stuff where this is why we do the podcast, because you can get a little deeper into the stories of what people do day in and day out, and little tricks of the trade,
right,
and things like that. So, that's very fascinating. What is something that you have learned about yourself in running Moonlight Farms? As I know, it's not a team of 37 people. I mean, it's a team it's a team of Darrin, a one Darrin. So, what is something that you have learned from doing this?
Well, I grew up kind of shy and backwards. The only place where I felt like I put myself on full display was on the basketball court. But I was actually voted the shyest guy in my senior class in high school.
Really?
But when I come out to these markets and I meet people to sell the milk to, I've always, ever since I was a kid, I loved babies. So I grew up loving children, and I've had people say, man, you should have been a teacher or a coach or something. And I think, well, maybe I should have. But I love interacting with the kids and meeting their parents and meeting the people. And I find that the people that are drawn to this product they're great people, and I feel like it makes me feel like I'm giving something back because it's something that they are seeking.
Yeah, it's nice to make a product that people appreciate and want and need, and then you develop your regulars where you get to know their stories. And I will say I know quite a few vendors at the Wildlife Farmers Market, and you wouldn't be voted most shy vendor. So you've grown at
Well,
least.
I like I said, anybody who knew my dad, he was far. He never went anywhere where he met a stranger, you know. So for me to be shy and backwards, it kind of threw everybody off. But yet, and my son is very outgoing and everything, but I was always very reserved. But I love getting to know people and finding out their story, and hopefully, I try to. I want them to know that they matter to me because they keep me from I tell people jokingly, it keeps me from having to get a job.
Yeah.
Because when you love what you do, you love it.
So I'm definitely in the same boat as I don't have a job. Those of you that are listening and watching, you're watching me do my job. This is my job. This is what I get to do, is talk to one of the almost 400 vendors that we have, and of course not all 400 vendors are there at one time. They never are. But the point is, in this podcast where we're interviewing different vendors, I won't run out of content anytime soon, because there's always going to be people to interview. And so it's great because I get to know all of you guys and get to hear your stories and talk through that. Let's talk now a little bit about the Wild and Eye Farmers Market, because you have told me a few times about other market experiences, and I don't need you on this show to throw any under the bus.
No.
But I just want to know because not every vendor has experienced other markets, and although the Wild and Eye Farmers Market is stupendous, they don't know what they don't know, and they don't know what to base it off of. They have a great experience, but they don't know if that's normal or not. And so I want to hear from you, what are some of the differences that you think makes the Wild and Eye Farmers Market so great?
Well, first of all, I think what the thing I appreciate about this market so much is that everything at the market that is for sale is manufactured, grown, sown, whatever, blended. It's done by the vendor. It's not something they've bought and brought in there and selling, marking it up and thinking, hey, we're at a farmer's market, so let's buy it there. It's when I found that out, I thought, man, that's great. And then you come here, and the management here, Ashley, I mean, I tell her this all the time, and everybody does. I mean, she just, here's your spot, and she never says a word to you. You know, it's just, she might send me an email saying, hey, dude, pay your bill, because I'm always one of the, I was like, oh, crap, I got to pay that. But it's like,
but other than that,
she just lets you do your thing, and it just, that's the thing that just, it's just so relaxed, and the vendors, it's just like a big family.
Yeah, it really is, when especially those that are kind of in the same spot, maybe week in and week out, and you're kind of next to the same people, and it's like you get to know some of those people. I remember, for example, and this is a good shout out for the podcast to look up Anna.
Oh yeah.
As one of the other podcasts. It was a while back, but as you scroll through this channel, look back at Anna, because her story was really cool, because she's from Italy,
right? And
you can tell when she speaks, and she's just the sweetest person. And I remember in the summer of 2023, your spots were next to each other, and the dynamic of a 50-something-year-old farmer and a 20-something-year-old Italian were right next to each other,
and we got along fabulous.
I mean, it was the coolest thing. Like,
I just love her to death. I mean, she's just amazing, and I learned a lot about. I told her, I said, I'm not just saying this, but I have one of my bucket list things before I die. I'd love to go to Rome and stand in front of that Colosseum and just say, "Wow," you know. And
Yeah.
she's like, "Oh, you got to do it. You got
Yeah,
to do
yeah,
it." You
yeah.
know?
She's wonderful, and that's just one tiny example. Let alone other vendors, and if you can't make a certain week and you have vendors, then when you're back, oh, how's it going? Or I mean, it really is like a family. And when you said, Ashley lets you do your thing, the big thing that I've heard is that not all markets are that way, and so it really trickles down to the people when it's run that way, and it makes for a good market and a great market. And that's why
Get into a lot of I won't go into it, but there gets to be double standards.
sure,
That was the problem. That's the problem.
yeah.
And here, there's none of that.
Right. Ashley just treats everyone, you're all the same because she's fair, and this is the way we run it. And then you can do however you want to do it. I'm not going to stand in your way. And that trickles down. And then when the customers come to the market, that's what they see is, oh, the vendors are all in their spot. They're doing their thing. And that's what the people want. And I think Ashley knows that. And so she lets you do that. So how long have you been at the Wildlanai Farmers Market?
Well, starting in the summer market, this will be my third summer
Okay.
coming up. So my second winter finishing up here.
Okay. And how did you originally find out about the market?
Well, I was always I was at a kind of there in, let's see, 22. So in late 21, I felt like I was kind of maxed out where I was. The business was doing great, but I just felt like I wanted to expand a little more. And actually, Tom Bennett Farms, I know he's here some. He does a lot of markets, but he said, "Oh yeah, there's two of them over there," and he recommended this one, and I came over to check it out. And actually, the one of the guys from the old Fort Soap Company, when I was there, that was still in the Aunt Millie's building there 2 years ago, and I was in there, and I had the same coat on I got now, and he come up there and tapped me on the shoulder, and I turned around expecting to be somebody I knew, and he was sitting there like he was praying, and he goes, "Please tell me you're going to be a vendor here." And I was like, "Really?" And he practically ran to Ashley, and then there she was, and I was like, "Yeah, this sounds good." And it just, like anything, it took off a little slow, but then once it started catching on, it's like, it just, and there's the people in this town, they're so open to the product,
They love their milk in this town, I guess,
more
huh?
so than, it's a lot easier selling here than it was in my previous,
Yeah. I remember there was about 3 weeks in a row where I'd see you and you would just have this grin on your face and you would just say, "Well, I sold out." And then each week you would bring more and you'd still sell out.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it was crazy. And you're like, "Well, I sold the most ever this week." It's like, geez,
from the end of the first summer till the end of the second summer, it actually tripled. So yeah, it was.
That's awesome. That's so cool. What advice would you give, not necessarily in farming per se, but I want to ask you more about, you run everything. So from someone paying you, setting that up on a schedule, or they're going to do this, or they're going to meet you here and you're going to get this product, you run the business. You're doing it. So if someone was going to ask you about running their own business, even if it wasn't farming per se, what is something that you would want them to know if they wanted to start either having their own business, if they found something that they were good at that they could create, meaning maybe down the line they could become a vendor? If they had questions just for you, what would you tell them?
Well, honestly, I think it goes back to what I said about, the commitment to the cows. You got to find something that you truly love, because if you like to do it, you might be well, this weekend I got something else I'd rather be doing. But if this is something you truly love to do, and then if you can turn it into something that you can make some money at, then you have to make the decision, is this something I can make a living at? Or is it just something I'm doing for a little extra side hustle? And with me, it was a side hustle there for about the first 5 years, but then fate had a strange twist on everything, and I said, okay, I'm going to throw caution to the wind, or take a leap of faith, however you want to say it, and prove that, in the day of mega farms, I want to prove that less can still be more.
Yeah. I think the key thing is, like you are saying, passion has to almost overtake everything else, because I definitely know, and you can attest to this, I'm sure, there are going to be your bad days. And if you're not passionate, then those bad days actually overtake you, and you end up not doing it anymore. You quit or whatever. But when you're truly passionate about it, those bad days are just, well, okay, today was a bad day. Maybe tomorrow won't be, but I'm not going to stop because my passion won't let me. And if you're not passionate, you're just not going to make it.
Right.
I just think that's part of it. And I know you experienced that, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I think that's whether you're a young kid in athletics or business or anything. If you don't have the passion, you just, because I relate a lot of things to sports, because you think about, you and I have actually talked about some of our favorite athletes and stuff, and you think about a guy like Kobe Bryant or somebody, and you think, yeah, he was good when he was young, but his passion was beyond anybody he competed against.
Right.
Everybody said, this dude's nuts, but yeah. Look at where he got himself.
Yeah, and that's the same thing. Is if you don't and you don't have to be the Kobe Bryant of vending or whatever. No. But I mean, you don't, But if you are not passionate, you just simply know that you're not going to stick with it, because if you're not passionate, there's too many days that will drain you, in my opinion.
Oh yeah. The like here lately with what I've went through, I know that the physical part of life, is one thing, but the mental drain is what will get you down. And my body can recover physically, yep, but the mental thing, if you can't keep that in check, that will just kill you.
And I think, the older generation, as I'm in my 40s and you're in your 50s, I feel like your mental state was not something that was really worried about when we were teenagers and in our 20s and 30s. It wasn't talked about.
No.
It wasn't, and it's almost like you kind of wish you could pull some of these 20-year-olds and say, please don't be like me.
Yeah.
Like, please talk to people if you're feeling, this about XYZ, whatever it is. Please talk to someone. Don't think that it's uncool to be able to talk about and explain why you're having the feelings that you do. And I was never told that.
No.
And so I thought, especially as a male, that, well, that's not cool. You don't do that. And now it's like, no, it's not that it's cool. It's necessary. There's a difference. It's just necessary.
Well, I don't want to go into it too much, but in 2011, February 11th, my dad committed suicide. And so, and you go back in time, like you're saying, a lot of that stuff you just didn't talk about. But then when it happens,
you wish you would have.
Yeah, and then you have to realize that maybe it's okay to not be okay, or maybe it's okay to just, some people are people, some people are going to judge you for it, and then your true friends are going to be there to put their arm around you and pat you on the back and say, I'm here for you, buddy, whatever you need.
Right.
And
right.
I have some of those, so.
Yeah. No, I get it. And hey, at least we learned at some point. I mean, there are people who are 70 and have not learned that you have to be able to have those people to talk through things, or have someone, if it's a professional, whatever it is, to talk through some of these things, because not just if you're an entrepreneur, because there's a lot of vendors that listen to this podcast who want to learn about each other, about your fellow vendors and all that. But there are people that listen to this podcast that do not own a business, and it doesn't matter, because even if you work a 9-to-5 job where you clock in and clock out, your mental state is still something that you should feel good about, being able to talk to someone and not keep it inside, whether you're an entrepreneur or not. We're just saying that if you don't talk it through and you let your bad days overtake you, you won't last as an entrepreneur, because your passion will run out and you won't do the thing anymore. But just in general, right? I mean, you have to be able to talk about your feelings with someone for your mental state in order to function as a proper adult.
Well, I worked, like I said, I worked in factories for the better part of 30 years, plus farming and stuff. And I know I always worked the midnight shift, so I'd get off work at either 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning, and there's no management to talk to at those times, at that time of day. So, a lot of days I went home with a lot of pent up energy and frustration, and it's tough enough to sleep during the day without having all that. So yeah, and then, you go back that night and it's just, I don't know. Like I said, I've always been one that's geared to want to do my own thing. And I'm not saying I can't play well with others, but yet it's I just enjoy knowing that, hey, if something goes wrong, I have to fix it, or I'm the one that did it, or whatever. And I just, you just kind of have to figure it out and go on.
Yeah. So, Darrin, are you ready for the last question? Let me give a little background. I will say that there are probably, it's under 10. There's probably 6 or 7 people that come up to me on the regular, and we discuss the podcast. Hey, it was great that you had so and so on. I really like this, or whatever, right? And Darrin is one of those people that is a true fan of the podcast, and I'm grateful for it. And we talked about doing the podcast. We talked about this last question, and you were like, "Oh yeah, I know all about it," and I liked some of the answers, and so you definitely have listened to some of the answers before. You definitely know the question that is coming. If this is the first time that you are watching or listening to this podcast, I always ask the same question at the end every single time. And so here it is. I'll in case someone is listening for the first time, Darrin knows what I'm about to ask. So we are pretending that maybe we'll say governor for your situation, since I usually say Fort Wayne, but your jurisdiction is a little bit outside of Fort Wayne. But so we'll say the governor comes to you and he says, I'm going to petition you, Darrin, to make a sign that the entire state of Indiana, all of Fort Wayne for sure, will be able to look in the sky and see. And you're in charge of what it says. And so a lot of people are going to see this. They're going to look in the sky, either an airplane skyline rider or on the top of the biggest building, whatever it is, everyone's going to see it. And you are the one that gets to say what it says. What does it say?
Well, I already told you, and if you asked me this randomly 5 years ago, I would have told you the same thing without thinking about it, because this is what my standard answer to this is: trust your gut. Because there's been so many times in my life I look back and I said, man, I knew better than to do what I did. I didn't go with my instinct. And I guess if you expanded on it, I would say be true to yourself. Trust your gut.
Love that. It's weird how your conscience deep down knows that either to have that tough conversation, or to keep moving forward, or to move forward but in a different direction, or a lot of times those instincts are right, but you always want to second guess yourself, especially if that decision is hard. Don't you find that
Oh, yeah.
if that decision isn't easy, you're like, well, maybe tomorrow I'll maybe think about it, and then when tomorrow comes, you find a way to not do that thing, whatever.
Well, then some people will tell you that tomorrow never comes.
Well, there you go. Yep. So yeah, I like that. That's I like that you had that. Whether you said whether it was 5 years ago or you knew it was coming and you like, got your answer together. Like, nope, you just had it. And
yeah, I look back to so many things and I'm like, why did I do that? Because I knew in my heart it wasn't what I wanted to do. It's just sometimes you do what you think other people want you to do, and it's not being true to yourself.
Yeah. Yep. And that's the number one thing that I think is really, really hard to live with if you are not true to yourself and you run out of time, because at some point you'll be 70 and you can't go back. Your body can't handle the same things that it could at 50 and 40 and 35 and 20. So at a certain point, you can't go back. And so now is the time to be true to yourself while you can still do it. And you've learned that for sure.
Well, and then one of my favorite quotes is that discipline weighs ounces, regret weighs tons. So the earlier you can learn that discipline, and someday, because I don't, I've had a tough go of it this winter, and I think about it, and I think, well, if I can become more disciplined and get back in the groove, and then when I am 70, I don't want to look back and say, man, I was so close. Why did I give up? I don't want to have those regrets when I'm too old to do it. I want to be able to say, hey, I did what I wanted to do.
Yep. Give 100% and know later that, hey, you left it all out there. Just like a basketball player, they left it all out there on the floor. Kobe can say that. Kobe Bryant can say he can never be upset that he didn't win more rings, because he knows, hey, I really did try my absolute hardest. If I didn't win, hey, then I guess the Celtics were better that day. But I absolutely, it wasn't because of my effort. It was just because, hey, they put the ball in the basket more times than I could, or that my teammates could. But he knows that he put in the effort. There's no wondering. Up until the day he died, I don't think he ever had to wonder. And that's a pretty cool thing, because not everyone can say that.
Right.
So,
and I feel like I said, there's, when you look at the, farming in general, especially the dairy business, when you go back to when I was a kid, how many tens of thousands of farms that were in business then that are not now. And, I look at it as every morning, I think I have to look at it as I get to go out and milk my cows. It's not that I have to do it. I get to, because there's a lot of people who don't get to do what they want to do, whether it's no matter what they want, no matter what their passion is. They're stuck in a factory or they're stuck in an office or whatever. And it's like you have, and I do believe if you have that drive, you can do whatever you want.
yeah.
And I always, I'm 59, going to be 59 later in August, and I always think, well, Colonel Sanders was 65, when KFC took off, and I sometimes I wish I was 25 and had started this where I'm at now, but back then it wasn't going to be as well received as it is now. So, but I'm here now, and I want to make it happen.
Yep. There's a reason for everything, and we're glad you're at the Wild Eye Farmers Market. And every Saturday from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. you can come see us. Thank you, Darrin, for being here. Very inspirational, and I'm happy you were able to do the show. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I'm glad to do it.
This podcast is brought to you by Coraggio Media. The show is edited by me and sponsored by the Wild Eye Farmers Market. Follow them on Facebook and Instagram for all the latest updates. We will see you next week, where we will be sure to show you how you can enjoy Fort Wayne.